Some controversy outside of karting. Of course, over the weekend, the big story was the Lewis Hamilton-Max Verstappen crash over in Silverstone. We're going to talk about that. And that's the first thing we want to talk about, mainly because F1 race directing always kind of reflects back in the whole motorsport and what they call and what they don't call. For those who didn't watch the race, Lewis Hamilton attempted a pretty aggressive move in almost a near full throttle corner for the F1 guys. Barely got a nose in, made contact left front to right rear, sent Verstappen spinning, got a 10-second holding penalty, came back, won the race. And the big question is, was the penalty deserved? Who was at fault? Was no one at fault? Should they let him go at it more? I think probably it got F1 more eyeballs with that level of drama heating up in the championship than it's had been in a fat minute. Compared to where it's already been, which the Liberty Media guys have done a great job blowing it all up to the point that it got even a little bit nasty over social media from the fans going on each other. So we're going to start off around the room, give everybody 60 seconds more or less. Your take on the wreck. Was the penalty good enough? Should it have happened? Should it not have happened? We'll start off, of course, with our youngest here, and we'll go on up. Connor, your thoughts?
I definitely think it was Hamilton's fault. When you're on the inside of someone, it's your responsibility to Max left more than a car length of room, and Hamilton just blew the apex. And I don't know if his car didn't turn or what, but he shouldn't have been that close to Verstappen because he had way more room on the inside.
Fair enough. And then what kind of penalty should he have gotten? Was it 10 seconds more than enough or not enough?
I think the 10 seconds was fair. I don't know what else you could have done. You can't DQ him for something because it was arguably a racing incident. So I think the 10 seconds was fair.
Fair enough. Paulie, what do you think?
I'd probably go to racing incident. I kind of think, Lewis could have been more down to the bottom, but I also think Max could have been not so aggressive on the outside. They're both racing for the win, so I probably wouldn't have changed anything if I was either one of them.
Would you have penalized Lewis for the move at all?
Nah. I just think it was a racing incident. I don't think anybody should have been penalized.
Ryan, what do you think?
I think it's a racing incident, but I think it's Max's fault. Just because you're the fastest guy, you got the best car. Like, if he's on the inside of you, he's being super aggressive. Like, a few corners before, Hamilton had cleared him on the outside going into the left-hander before that corner. And Max threw it down the inside. And it's like, you don't need to be that desperate when you're leading the championship. Like, you got all the cards now. It's not the reverse like it normally is. He was driving like he used to when the car was slower. And it's like, now you've got the best car. You just kind of have to, give it up sometimes. Like, you're in the lead. You've got to show that you can race a championship like a champion would. And I think that wasn't really that good of a show, because even though it wasn't his fault, he still ended up with 0 points and Hamilton got all the points. So it just shows that he could have given it up and just played it safe and finished second. Second is better than in the wall at 51 Gs.
Yeah, that was the scariest part of it all. It was good that he walked away, but that's probably a good point that no one really talks about, is that right or wrong, it's less about that from a driver's perspective, right? Because you can be in the right, in a wreck and still get wrecked, but the real right decision to make is to not put yourself in the chance to get wrecked,
Exactly. I think the funniest thing of everything, though, is not the driving or anything, is the fact that all the team bosses were so involved like they are in car. It reminded me of karting dads. And they're both yelling at the race director, like, "Hey man, you got to change it. I'm sending you an email right now." And it's that's so karting dads, 101. It's so funny that in the highest motorsport, same thing. Nothing changes.
Yeah, all the way up. Braden, what do you think?
Oh, it's for sure Lewis's fault. Obviously, whenever there's two decisions and one of the decisions is Lewis Hamilton is wrong, I always have to go with that one. But more or less, he turned left knowing that he wouldn't get down to the apex, and knowing that he was squeezing Max to the left. And Max isn't going to let some guy push him around. So obviously he turns in full commitment, nothing else from him. And then Lewis careens into him, taking him out. And then Lewis is like, okay, fine and dandy, drive on, no penalty, because everyone knows that it's as I saw in a YouTube comment, the FIA, or the Mafia powered by Mercedes.
FIMG.
That's what I have to say about that.
I'd probably go with it's more of just kind of like a racing incident. I mean, they were both going for the same real estate on the track, and like Max gave him enough room, but I think when you look back at the video, like you saw Lewis got all the way up next to him, and you could see he kind of tried to get back out of it, but just miscalculated by a very little bit. Um, I think a lot of people are making more of a big deal out of it because of how like scary the crash looked. And I think that's why people think the penalty should be worse than what it was. I think a 10-second penalty is kind of the right thing to do. They can't do a more harsh penalty than that.
Yeah, I mean, they really, they don't do like black flags like we see in a lot of other racing. 10 seconds is pretty major. I think it's cool now that they're doing it during the pit stops versus where, it seems like the majority of them always end up getting tacked on when they can add it into the pits and let the guy rebound and try and fight back for it. I think that's pretty cool. I think in the same way that I like, in most cases, like time penalties better in karting versus position because at least the guy can try and outrun it. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. I don't think that wreck is as bad if the impact is, if there's more runoff and he just kind of spins off because they seem to do that to each other all the time because the cars are so aero dependent. Everyone forgets too that with Max crowding him down, taking the air a little bit off on Lewis and sucking him around, it's going to make it understeer and push into him anyway. So no matter how deep he goes into the corner. So, yeah, but it was like Ryan said. I think the fact that the team bosses seemed more into it even than the drivers. I mean, there was even people guessing that Max wasn't even the one to tweet it out on his own account, talking about Lewis celebrating on the podium made him sick. It doesn't really,
Oh God.
That was
everybody
too far.
played it up, but it's the type of media we need. I mean, this week we didn't have any drivers in, and on our video. And well, I mean, we have this here, but everyone's friendly right now. At least on the surface. We cut out the wrong parts, but that kind of drama does a lot for that sport, so it brought it a lot forward.